going to be talking about overcoming imposter syndrome. So, hi everyone, I'm Kristen, and I'm a front-end developer at Palantir.net. And prior to that, I was a front-end and Ruby on Rails developer. And if you would like to find me on Drupal or Twitter or pretty much anywhere on the internet, my handle is Chris May. So, before I get into how we can overcome imposter syndrome, I wanted to first talk a little bit about it and what it is. So, basically, imposter syndrome is the idea that you're a fraud, that your success is, due more to good luck or good timing, or maybe the fact that you fooled everyone around you. And kind of the feeling that eventually everyone is going to figure out that, you are this giant fraud. And just out of curiosity, how many people in this room have ever felt, Fatima's hand is already up, have ever felt imposter syndrome? So, quite a lot of you. It's estimated that, 70% of the people in the US have experienced it at some point, so that's not surprising. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my career path and how I've had imposter syndrome throughout that. So even though I work as a developer now, it's not really something I originally planned on doing. If you had asked me 10 years ago what I thought I was going to do with my career, I thought I was going to be an architect. That did not pan out for me. If you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have said UX researcher. So we're getting a little closer. But I ended up just kind of falling into development. After college, I got a job that originally started as UX research, quickly transitioned into, we don't have time for all this research. We need someone to help our one front-end developer, so why don't you do that? And then that transitioned into, we need more people doing Ruby on Rails, so now you can learn that. So that was kind of an intimidating process, getting thrown into all of this stuff without really having a background in it. There was a lot of learning as I was going, and at first I was intimidated and I thought, it's just because I don't know that much. As I get more experience, I'm going to start feeling better about this. But I actually found that wasn't necessarily the case. No matter how much I learned, I always felt like everyone else knew more, and my own skills were not enough, and there was a lot of downplaying the things that I was accomplishing. So a lot of the things that I was thinking was, I only got here because I got lucky. I'm not really actually good at this. They just needed someone, and I happened to be here. And kind of feelings of not really belonging. And I also noticed that in addition to feeling imposter syndrome at work, I was also kind of feeling it in my free time. So I was just, imposter syndrome everywhere. I also weightlift, which at first glance, it might not seem like coding and weightlifting have a lot in common. One involves, sitting at a desk all day. The other involves being pretty physically active. But they have more in common than you might think. So both have certain terminologies and languages that you have to learn, and it can be kind of a steep learning curve if you're coming in not knowing any of this. They both have certain ways of doing things, and they both have consequences if you do something wrong. No one wants to make the change that totally, breaks a website, and you really don't want to hurt yourself while you're at the gym either. In addition to all of that, I think in both arenas I felt a lot of pressure to succeed and to do both of these things well. And having that pressure just kind of always made me feel like I wasn't performing well enough. And another thing that was a factor was, I would say I don't necessarily look like a typical, or I guess stereotypical member of either of these groups. So on my very first development job after college, the team size fluctuated a little bit, but this is kind of a general representation of what it looked like. There was only one other woman, and there were definitely a lot more men on the team, so I was already different in that regard. And then, being a queer woman was just another step that I was removed from everyone. And I was actually way younger than the rest of my team, so I really felt like I didn't fit in with any of them. And I kind of felt, the same way when I would go to the gym. It would usually be me and a bunch of other men. So I always get excited when I see other women at the gym. So I had both of these arenas in my life where I was kind of feeling like I didn't fit in. I was feeling like I wasn't measuring up. The skills that I had weren't good enough. But I realized that I was able to overcome imposter syndrome a lot easier with my weightlifting practice than I was at work. It took like a fraction of the time. And I still struggle with imposter syndrome at work sometimes. So, some of the things that I found helpful were to not compare yourself to other people. So with weightlifting, I kind of accepted that I wouldn't be an expert immediately, and I was okay with that. For some reason in my mind, it was okay that it took a long time to work up to being able to lift really heavy weights. I focused more on what I was capable of doing and not what others were doing, which can be hard sometimes, especially at the gym when it's very easy to see what other people are doing. It's very easy to compare yourself because everyone's kind of out there in the open. At work, I felt like a failure when I couldn't figure something out, and I was comparing myself to what other people were able to do, even though a lot of them had, many years more experience than me. If they could do something and I couldn't, I still felt like a failure. And I was just constantly worried about my performance compared to other people's performance. But there's always going to be someone who knows more than you, so you can't compare yourself to everyone. And so this led to me thinking, I don't belong here because my skills are not adding anything to the team. Anyone else on the team could do the things I'm doing. It doesn't have to be me. And so, as I was kind of expressing this to someone once, they, came up with this hypothetical situation for me. So imagine that you are watching a varsity high school football game, and one of the players is not even in high school. They're in 8th grade, so they're, a lot younger than the rest of the players. And, this 8th grader is not necessarily the quarterback or the star of the team, but they show up and they make good plays and they're contributing. And they're there for their teammates when they need him. What would your impression of him be? So if anyone doesn't mind being put on the spot and wants to tell me what their impression would be.
I would be like, you're so awesome. Like, look at you going out there and, doing your best and trying hard. I'd be impressed by them. I would be like, you're trying so hard and you're doing a lot of work contributing to this team when you're on a team with people who are so much older than you and have assumably been doing it for longer. So I'd be very impressed, I think.
That is the correct takeaway. So your skills matter, and you can still provide value to your team, even if you are still new and still learning things. And in all honesty, there probably are things that you might be able to do better than some of the other people on your team. And if you can figure out what those are and feel good about them, that can help a lot. So for me, I found that at my previous job, that was writing CSS. Most of my coworkers were back-end devs, and they did not really understand CSS. So figuring out that was something that I could feel like I was really contributing back to the team was helpful and made me feel good about myself. So focusing on that, as well as focusing on what things I did accomplish, helped me kind of gain confidence in my abilities. So, of course, it's good to focus on the things that you're good at and to know what those are, but we're not always going to know everything all the time. So sometimes you do need to ask for help. And a lot of times, so with weightlifting, if I, didn't know how to do something, I was totally fine, asking my teacher or a personal trainer, how do I do this? I want to make sure I'm doing it correctly. Or there are a lot of things called assisted exercises. So like if you can't do a pull-up on your own, you can use a band to kind of help you get up. And so I would do assisted exercises if I couldn't do the full ones. Whereas at work, I often felt pressure to always have to figure things out on my own, feel like I needed to be able to do it without asking for help. I was worried that people would think my questions were stupid, and if I asked them, they would think that I was stupid. Or, you know, if I ask this question, they're going to realize that I don't actually know what I'm doing at all. But in reality, no one has all of the answers. Even the person that you think has all the answers, I'm sure that they don't. And kind of realizing that it's okay to ask for help when I need it has helped build my confidence, and then you have now learned how to do something new. So you've added to your skills. You know, also, I have had other people ask me for help, so kind of being on the flip side of that, you realize, like, I'm not judging this other person for asking me for help, so I should not go into that when I'm thinking other people will judge me for it. So, of course, you know, it can be kind of discouraging if you feel like you're getting stuck or needing to ask for help a lot. But in reality, not every day is going to go perfectly, and there are going to be things that can be discouraging. But it's important to, you know, not internalize that and blame yourself for it. So with weightlifting, when I wasn't able to perform well, I would blame the circumstances, like maybe I didn't get enough sleep the night before, or maybe I had, you know, been working out for too long and it was making me tired. I was blaming it more on the circumstances than saying that I myself wasn't good enough. Whereas at work, if I had unproductive days, I tended to blame myself, which would make me feel kind of like a failure. You know, there's this feeling that if you spend all day working on something and you still have not been able to figure it out, like that can be a very discouraging feeling, at least for me. So it turns out that life affects work and workouts. Sometimes things are going on outside that, you know, have an impact on your day-to-day life. And sometimes we'll have bad days, and it might not be because of work. It could be because of, you know, something that's going on in our personal lives, or we're just going through a tough time. And kind of accepting that we'll have bad days and has helped me stop feeling bad about myself when they happen. Just accepting that, you know, okay, today wasn't great. I spent a long time working on this problem. I'm going to look at it tomorrow with fresh eyes. And a lot of times that is really all it takes. And, you know, the next morning I'll look at something and within 10 minutes I've figured out, you know, what I couldn't figure out yesterday in 8 hours. That's, you know, so just kind of not putting that on yourself and feeling like a failure. Of course, you know, when we're feeling discouraged, it can be tough to stay motivated or want to keep working at something. So I've found that setting goals is helpful in kind of keeping that momentum, even when you are feeling a little bit discouraged about something. And it kind of keeps you progressing towards where you want to be. So I was kind of setting goals in both of these areas, but they were a little bit different, as you'll see. So with weightlifting, for example, one of my goals, these slides are from last year, I did not update it. One of my goals was to be able to deadlift 200 pounds by the end of June, which I got very close to but did not quite meet. Whereas in tech, I had very vague goals like get better at coding. What does that mean? Good question. So there's really no way to know if I've kind of met that goal. Sure, I could be better at some things, but it's not really very specific. So because of that, I think it was easy to fall into this trap of thinking like I'm not really good at this because I wasn't really meeting specific goals, and there was no way for me to track my progress. So I found that, you know, when trying to set goals, it's helpful if they are quantifiable. That way you can actually tell whether or not you've specifically met your goal. Also setting a time frame. I found that for me that kind of helps keep it on my mind and keep me from putting it off. And it's okay to adjust that. My deadlifting goal, I originally thought I would meet it sooner, and it didn't happen, so I adjusted it a little bit, and that's okay. And it's also okay not to meet your goals. Sometimes priorities change. Just because you've changed your goal to something that is now a priority doesn't make you a failure for not meeting your original goal. So you can't meet your goals if you don't know what they are. And I found that setting achievable goals has helped me to stay more motivated and excited about things, and has helped me keep progressing even when I might otherwise feel discouraged. Another thing that is important is owning your achievements. So when you do something well, it's okay to acknowledge that. With weightlifting, I found that it was very easy for me to celebrate achievements and be proud of progress that I was making. Even if week to week I was maybe adding only 1 more pound, that was still an achievement, and that was still something that I was happy about. Whereas with tech, I kind of downplayed my achievements and didn't necessarily think that I was accomplishing things. And when people would tell me I did a good job on something that I would say all the time was, oh, it wasn't that hard. Which, is kind of suggesting that if it was something that was hard, I wouldn't be able to do it, which is not true. So when other people acknowledge you, it's okay to believe them. I think this has been probably one of the hardest things for me. But, thinking about it, when I'm acknowledging others for the work that they have done, I'm not lying or, saying it to make them feel good. I'm saying it because I think that it's true. But yet, when other people were complimenting me, I thought that they were just, trying to be nice. So, when someone does compliment you on something, take it at face value. Something that one of my coaches has also said is that downplaying a compliment from someone else is actually very hurtful to the person who gave you the compliment. They thought you did something so well that they went to the effort of telling you that you did a good job, and for you to turn around and say, I don't really believe you, that's kind of hurtful to them. So it's okay to just take it and believe them. So of course this also has helped to improve my confidence. It feels good to have people think that you're good at things. It helps you feel good about yourself. Another thing that I found helpful is to find mentors. So with weightlifting, I have worked with personal trainers and taken a lot of classes to help me improve things that I wanted to improve on. Whereas with work, I didn't necessarily immediately see what value I would get out of mentorship, so it wasn't something that I put a lot of time into. I was used to relying on myself, and I felt like having to have someone mentor me was, again, admitting that I couldn't do something on my own. So I always kind of felt this need to be self-sufficient, kind of going back to the idea that asking for help or needing help from anyone would prove that I'm not good enough to be here. But sometimes having someone else to help kind of give you a push on something can help make you better. So when I'm working out, a lot of times I would have trainers that would put a lot more weight onto a bar than I thought that I would be able to lift. And they would, tell me to lift it, and I would kind of look at them and be like, I don't know about that. But I would try, and I think, most of the time I would end up being successful. So even though I would not have done that on my own, it was something that I was able to do. So, working with mentors in tech has been helpful in, pushing me to try things that I wouldn't necessarily have tried on my own or wouldn't have thought that I would have been good at, and has helped kind of move me out of my original comfort zone to feel comfortable working on more things. And kind of on the flip side of that, having someone to mentor you can be helpful, but mentoring other people is also really helpful. So with like weightlifting and working out, that was something that I talked a lot about with friends and encouraged them to try. And if they wanted me to go work out with them, that is, I would go and help them out and make sure they were doing things correctly. Whereas with tech, I kind of always had this feeling that I wasn't skilled enough to really be helping anyone else. And so like back when I was a grad student, I would help friends out with coursework, which seemed like a pretty low risk kind of thing, like, oh, we're in class together and you're having trouble with homework, so I can help you out with it. And then I signed up for the tutoring list at our school, and the first time that I ever got a request from anyone, I kind of hesitated because I felt like, oh, like, I don't know if I'm good enough for you to be paying me for my help. So I, always had this feeling of like, what value is someone else going to get out of me trying to teach them this? But I did, in the end, agree to help tutor this student, and they ended up saying that they did get a lot out of it, and that at the end of it, they understood the material a lot better. So even though it was something that I doubted, it was something that I was totally able to do. Even though I, initially felt like I wasn't knowledgeable enough and I wasn't really going to be helpful to them. And sometimes that meant saying, if they had a question that I didn't know the answer to, sometimes I had to say, I'm actually not sure on that. I'm going to look at it before our next session, and I will have an answer for you then. And it's okay to say that you don't know the answer. But everyone is an expert at something, and if you can find that thing that you're an expert at, or even something that you're not an expert at, and mentor others, it can help you accept your own skills. So kind of going through that process of tutoring someone kind of helped me accept that this was a way that I could add value, and it also helped me learn the material better for myself. So talked about finding mentors and also about mentoring people. So how do you find people like that? That's kind of where things like MidCamp and the people in this room come in. Joining the community. So with weightlifting, I connected with other friends and people who also did it. And it was nice to have that community of interest and have something that we could talk about together. But with tech, again, I kind of felt like, I didn't want to get involved because I didn't feel like I would be adding any value to the community. And I also didn't really recognize what value I would get out of being part of the community. So there were a lot of feelings of, I don't have anything to contribute. But I have since learned that really anyone can contribute. Last year I went to DrupalCon for the first time, and I went to the sprint day on Friday, and I actually was able to make my first patch while I was there, which, if you had asked me before going to DrupalCon if I thought that was something that I could do, I would have said no, probably not. But being there and being involved with the community, I was able to find an awesome mentor who kind of helped, walk me through tickets and making patches and contributing. and having that support, helped me and, showed me that really it is possible for anyone to contribute. And I found within the Drupal community there are, tons of people who would be happy to help mentor you if, that is something that you are interested in doing. So I found that getting more involved in the community has given me more support and has helped me improve my skills and become a lot more comfortable doing things. And then, so I've talked a lot about skills and feeling comfortable with my own abilities. But if you remember back to the beginning of the talk, one of the other reasons that I have kind of felt imposter syndrome is feeling like I'm a little bit different than kind of the stereotypical member of the community. So something else that I found important is finding role models. So finding other people who do look like you and are doing great things can help you feel like there is a place for you in the community. So like weightlifting and working out, I looked out for other women who excel to inspire me. So I don't know if anyone here has watched American Ninja Warrior. This is Casey Canzaro. She was the first woman to complete the qualifying course for American Ninja Warrior. And I have a fun video. So you could kind of hear a lot of what the commentators were saying, that Casey doesn't really look like a typical competitor on an American Ninja Warrior. She's a lot smaller and shorter and can't reach as far, but yet she still made it to the end. So, seeing someone who, like me, also does not necessarily look like, a typical weightlifter or someone who is into fitness stuff, seeing her be able to compete like that and achieve, inspires me to do the same things. And kind of shows that even if you look different, you can still be a part of a community, and you can still, achieve at the same levels as everyone else. So, while I was finding role models for, weightlifting and fitness, with tech, I was only comparing myself to the people that were immediately around me, and I was seeing that I didn't look like them, and I was letting that influence me into feeling like I didn't belong. So, I don't look like my coworkers. Maybe that's because I don't actually belong here. So representation matters. And I have found that, finding other people who look like me and who are able to excel has helped me to feel, more like I belong and more like I can contribute to the community at the same level as anyone else. So kind of takeaways, your skills do matter and you are adding value, even though it might not necessarily always feel like it. No one has all the answers, even the people who you think do. So it's okay to ask for help if you need it. Life affects work. Sometimes you'll have bad days, but that doesn't mean that you yourself are a failure or that you're not good enough to be here. Goals are important for staying motivated, but it's hard to meet them if you don't know what they are. So make sure you are setting clear goals so that you can feel good about yourself when you do meet them. When other people acknowledge you, it's okay to believe them. Don't downplay it or assume that they are lying, because they're not. Sometimes having a push from someone else can help you go further, and get you out of your comfort zone and help you improve. Everyone is an expert at something, so find out what things you are an expert at, and help others to learn those things. And anyone can contribute, so don't be afraid to get involved with the community. You will add something to it, and you will also get value back out of it. And representation matters. So if you feel that you don't look like a member of the community, find someone else who does, and kind of let them show you that you do belong and that you can contribute. And possibly the most important, overcoming imposter syndrome takes a lot of time. It's something that I still struggle with sometimes, and I've been a developer now for 4 years. So a lot of these things don't necessarily come naturally, and that's okay. But if you keep them in mind and work towards it, it does get better. So that is all I have. Does anyone have any questions or comments or stories?
So you talk about imposter syndrome at work a lot, like it's something that is really personal to you, and I'm sure it is, but it's also something that a lot of women face just across workplaces. Like they've done studies that men will see a job posting and say, I can do that, and kind of like talk like they can figure it out, and then men, or women rather, will look at job postings and say, I don't have all those skills, and then not apply. And so beyond your personal experience, which I think is really valuable, and it's really interesting to see side by side with, like I can see that in myself, like how I treat myself differently in hobbies. What do you think would be the shift in sort of broader culture for women in the workplace around imposter syndrome?
I think a lot of that probably does come back to representation. At least, I don't know, that has kind of been my experience, of feeling like I didn't fit in, or like, I'm different, or I, don't have a background in this, so I need to make sure that I can meet every single criteria, or else, why are they going to hire me? So I think if you feel more like you are just a regular member of the community, there's kind of one fewer barrier when you're thinking about trying to get involved.
I can say that it's always terrifying that if I feel like I might not be able to find the answer to a problem. I hate asking for help and admitting that I couldn't figure something out. So that goes on forever. I think it's something that most of us have.
Yeah, no matter how long you've been doing something, it can be tough sometimes to admit that you don't have the answer.
So if I'm on a team with people that I really trust, that's when I start learning it's okay to ask questions. So to get over that problem, it really depends on the people around you.
All right, if there's no more questions, I will let you all go early.